Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome to the showdown between the Empire led by the Emperor Karl Franz and the Dark Elves who are going to be led by Marathi. So without further ado, let's jump right into this match and have some fun. So up here in the front line, I do have an entire infantry corps of spearmen with shields. So as you guys can see, we're not really trying to win the game with our infantry, we're just going to be using them to hold. Because the spearmen, number one, have really high melee defense at 44, and if they're getting attacked and rear charged by Cav or Marathi decides to attack them, at least they do have a bonus for Slarge. With the swordsmen, you're getting a little bit better value on their melee attack and overall weapon strength, but in this situation, based on the game and just trying to win with my artillery as well as my handgunners, I think that these guys are the safer pick. So we do have an entire front line of those guys. In the secondary line, just some standard spearmen on the flank, so kind of ran out of money, so unfortunately these guys don't get shields, but it is what it is. So we have two groups of those, one up on the high ground, I think, or oh no, actually, I think I forgot to place him up in the deployment screen, so he's going to be marching up, but it's not a problem because we have plenty of time here. We do have the silver bullets as well as one group of regular handgunners here, just to shoot at some of these Harganeth executioners. If Marathi's flying overhead and cackling and just being obnoxious, we can poke at her as well with those silver bullets. So hopefully that'll work out. We do also have the Hammer of the Witches, Hellblaster Volley Gun. So the Hammer of the Witch is definitely good because it can outrange the ballistas pretty heavily, but this guy's going to be a little bit of trouble. The Hellblaster Volley Gun only has 290 range, and unfortunately my opponent did go with a very heavy Reaper Bolt Thrower build, so he's going to be able to kind of dictate the terms of this thing and get some pretty good volleys here. Top of that, we have two mobile groups. We have the Emperor Karl Franz on a Barded Warhorse, which gives him 120 armor, so he's basically a linebacker now. He does have the Galmaraz, as well as the new and improved Hold the Line, so this gives 5 melee defense and 4 leadership. Definitely very good. So he's going to be riding with his contingent of Demogryph Knights with halberds here, putting them up to 35 melee defense. Pretty good stuff. We have a Jade Wizard, not a Life Wizard. Jade Wizard up here with Regrowth and Earthblood, and he's going to be tag teaming with these Demogryph Knights as well. So ultimately, it's really going to come down to, I think, the cav charges as well as the artillery back here. So hopefully they can do well. For my opponent, he does have Marathi, who's doing some juking. She's got the moves like Jagger over here. You can see the cannon's kind of missing, although I think I was aiming at the Harganeth in the back. He does have 3 groups of these Reaper Bolt Throwers, which I think is a bit of an answer against the new metagame of like handgunners, because the Reaper Bolt Throwers on spread mode actually do a ton of damage against handgunners. So I like this. And the single target fire will be pretty good against demis as well. So cool stuff for my opponent here. He's got the Hellebronai, the chillest of spears in the game. He's got Dread Spears. Looks like he does have some Witch Elves hiding in the forest. So this flank looks pretty open, right? It looks like I could just ride around with impunity. But if I'm not careful, these Witch Elves could rampage some of my Demogryph Knights. That could be disastrous. In the back, he has his elite infantry, so 3 Harganeth, 1 group being the Blades of the Blood Queen, so I definitely do not want to mess with these guys in melee, so I'll probably just be shooting them with artillery and some of these powder weapons. That's pretty much it, guys, so let's get this show on the road. There will be a little bit of fast forwarding in this game as there's a lot of posturing. It's a very tactical game, as it often is with the Empire. But you can see that Marathi is in the wrong neighborhood. She flies up and takes a huge volley in the face from those handgunners, and that does some pretty devastating damage. Granted, my opponent is also retaliating very effectively here. His Reaper Bolt Thrower is doing some huge damage against my Hellblasters, actually already taking one out, which really sucks. And also he gets some damage on my demis, taking out 1 model. So far, pretty even exchange. I got some good work in on Marathi, but again, he's pretty much shut down my 1,000 gold Hellblaster here, and that was a pretty huge bummer. But Marathi does fly in, not seeing these silver bullets as they are a hidden unit, and they pretty much take her down to almost half health, which is really good. And it looks like he is going to be using a Doom Bolt here, which let's go ahead and take a look excuse me, at the damage here on this. So here comes the Doom Bolt from the sky, from the warp, from wherever it hails, but it should do some pretty good damage. But yeah, that actually did a lot. Wow, that did about 30% HP damage. Definitely not bad at all. So the mainline engagement is underway. I'll be sending in my Spearmen to fight his Dread Spears. Going to be trying to overwhelm this position here, so I actually just do a charge with Karl Franz. So Karl's going to be coming in, providing some encouragement. The Demogryph Knights, hopefully we can kind of break this formation. So we charge in. Not the best situation, but again, we're probably not going to take any damage on our demis here. So Stand Your Ground goes off. My opponent does respond with the Soul Stealer. These guys are going to blitz against this artillery piece, so my Spearmen do get on top of the Reaper Bolt Thrower, which is really, really good. But there's still a ton of Reaper fire coming in, so it's just destroying my handgunners here, which is really unfortunate. At least they got Marathi pretty low. They did a bunch of damage to her. Over here, I see that he sent his Harganeth Executioners and his other troops here, so I'm like, you know what? When you're the Empire, you don't have to take this fight. I do have the Hammer of the Witches, so I still have kind of the initiative here, so I'm just going to be hanging out, just, cycle charging his infantry, trying to buy some time. Here, I do decide to charge with the demis, but he does pull in some spears, so very good maneuver there, so I will be retreating in just a moment, not committing to that engagement. In the meantime, though, over here, my Demogryph Knights do feign a charge in the front, do some pretty good damage, lower those Dread Spears, and then that opens up a back pocket because he thinks I'm committing here. I can now pull up and around, get a really good and tasty charge into these Harganeth Executioners, as well as this Reaper Bolt Thrower, which is going to be pretty good. My opponent does move the Hellebronai a little bit, not sure if they're going to engage Marathi. Obviously, there's not really too many safe engagements for her, so she's going to be using Melkoths to slow me down, but a charge from the Demogryph Knights coming in, some steel coming in, and just wrecking these guys, doing quite a bit of damage, and they do have pretty good AP against Harganeth as well. So we do get the bolt thrower. Karl Franz lacking behind a little bit on his Barded Warhorse, which only is 66 compared to the, well, they're actually poisoned, so we can't really tell what their speed is. But we do break the Reaper bolt thrower. So kind of my overarching game plan was to really take care of his Reapers, so then I could have impunity with my cannon and fall back. Over here we do have a pretty good engagement. The Jade Wizard fighting with some of his state troops against the Witch Elves, and we are able to pull them out of the forest. I think they were trying to catch my Demogryph Knights, but couldn't quite get there, and then they're just getting, beaten down by the Spearmen. They're very squishy. Witch Elves obviously, take damage from any sort of infantry unit. So we do a pretty good job there taking them out. The Bolt Thrower still firing in and poking my Demogryph Knights, who are actually out of control. So very, very wild battle. Bounce Empire is pretty even in the back. Karl Franz and company, I'm trying to force out his Reaper Bolt Throwers and then just, pick them up with the Demis to make sure that in the late game he's not going to get a lot of value. Over here in the back, you can see the Hammer of the Witches is just firing into the Blades of the Blood Queen, who we really need to take out. And you can see some devastating damage coming in. The Empire definitely doing what it's known for with its artillery. Karl Franz kind of lurking in the shadows with his Demogryph Knights, and this other group comes sweeping in. It's a great charge, so now we're kind of pressing my opponent's defenses a little bit. We've taken out a couple Reapers. We've tied up most of his Spearmen because we brought pretty overwhelming numbers. The Handgunners are coming back as well, so they're going to start shooting Marathi, but this is a really rough engagement. My opponent got me pretty good here. The Hellbroni and the Blades of the Blood Queen were able to drag down a ton of Demogryph Knights. And he also responded with Marathi, who does have AP and anti-large. So she's able to get a ton of value off these Demogryph Knights here. So looking a little bit scary as this one group does take a pounding. But again, with every second, he's taking gunfire. He's taking Hammer of the Witches fire into the Blades of the Blood Queen. And I do send in the Spearmen here just to kind of buy myself some time. So these Spearmen are going to make a sacrifice for Sigmar against some of the best infantry in the game. Blades of the Blood Queen, if I'm not mistaken, actually do beat Chosen with Great Weapons 1-1. I think they're actually the only infantry unit that can do that. So these guys definitely are no joke. In the meantime, the cannon continuing to shoot in. I actually switched to Marathi, seeing if I can get some, free shots here. But just roaming with my Demogryph Knights, getting a ton of cycle charging. Karl Franz is going to be leading them. And we should be able to take out these Bolt Throwers, which have just been raining havoc down on my back line. My Hellblaster Volley Gun has rallied. I think there's actually one cannon left, so we're going to be getting back on that in just a minute here. But we do get rid of the Reaper Bolt Thrower, and I think most of his defenses are tied up. And the reason I sent those Spearmen in is so then my Demogryph Knights could have gotten a free charge, so they would be tied up and they wouldn't be able to retaliate. Marathi, of course, being very mobile, is going to be able to take out these handgunners here, so very good stuff from my opponent. He gets in there and breaks these guys pretty quick. And the other group just breaks because Marathi's nearby, probably not wanting any of that funny business. So they run back. Unfortunate stuff. My opponent has kind of secured the midfield here, and he still has a ton of infantry. He has the Hellbroni. I think the Blades of the Blood Queen are here as well, but I have the mobility. So the Demogryph Knights, Karl Franz is actually quite a beast in melee with, high melee attack as well as 470 weapons rank. And if he does get attacked by Marathi, he can pop Galmaraz and pretty much like two-shot her at this point. You have a bunch of spears and some Demogryph Knights coming back in here, so these Spearmen were surrounded and their brothers couldn't let them fall without a fight, so those 7 or 8 Demogryph Knights come in and get a pretty good rear charge there, but they're probably going to get cut up as well. But still netted some pretty good damage on those guys, but I think I should have probably just fallen back with them instead of committing them there. In the meantime, taking advantage of my mobility here, Karl Franz is literally like on the slowest, fattest horse in all of the Empire. He's just riding around trying to keep up with these guys. What's the actual speed on Demis? I feel like they're like the same, but they're always like ahead of him. But anyways, Karl Franz, as well as his Jade Wizard, we're just cleaning up the Reaper Bolt Thrower crews, making sure my opponent can't reman those and start raining fire on my back line. He does get this one back online, which is a little bit unfortunate. My handgunners, though, do come back. They're going to be gunning down these crews right here, which is so good. Really performing well this game, despite having a ton of counterplay from my opponent here. We're able to shoot down those guys, which is solid. So those crews are definitely not going to come back. Probably going to shatter there, as the last one gets his head blown off by the silver bullets. So now we're going to start switching on to this other crew here. We're just going to be taking pot shots, hopefully able to finish it off, but it is returning fire. And you can see that my handgunners 23 models, these ones have 15. And the Hammer of the Witches needs to be the saving grace here, because despite the fact that the bounce of power is heavily in my favor, my opponent still has a ton of heavy infantry. He has a Hellbroni, he has the Blades of the Blood Queen, Dread Spears, all kinds of pressure. But I do, like I said, have mobility as well as powder, so I'm able to roam around. He can't really pin me down here, and I'm just taking advantage of every isolated unit he has. So over here, he's pretty tattered. He does have these Dread Spears, and they're definitely going to just get a full Sigmar charge right here. So the Demogryph Knights come in, and we are just going to plow these guys with the Emperor and the Jade Wizard kind of leading the charge here. Well, Karl and his fat horse, of course, is in the back, but he's having problems. He's having problems, guys. Don't judge him. But we are able to pound out those Dread Spears, do some pretty heavy damage, and break them. And now we have a pretty free charge on these Harganeth Executioners. So we're going to just Rohirrim style reform ranks here before we charge into these Oliphants, metaphorically speaking. And hopefully we can get some good damage. You can see the Hammer of the Witches softening them up and taking out so many models. Then the Demogryph Knights and Karl are going to lead the charge, and Karl clubs off one of their heads with Galmaraz, his mighty Warhammer. So that was amazing stuff. And within a matter of seconds, we're actually able to break those guys with the Overwatch from the Hammer of the Witches. And the Harganeth Executioners are going to fall. So very close fight right now. And this whole kind of mobility phase right here with the Dembergift Knights and taking advantage of my opponent being relatively beat up, I'm able to reform ranks with my Spearmen here. So they're going to kind of form and just allow the Emperor to lead a glorious final charge here. You can see we charge in there against the Blades of the Blood Queen. We fall back, hammer the Witches, just hammering these guys, doing some great work. And it's looking pretty grim for the Dark Elves. They don't have too many answers to our mobility. We still have plenty of ammo on the Hammer of the Witches. And right now, Marathi's thinking about coming in. But now we really spell their doom because the Hellblaster Volley Gun's back online. It's tearing these guys apart, doing some really good damage. Hammer of the Witches is just cleaving these filthy Dark Elf infantry. And Marathi comes in for a harass, but she actually gets caught by Karl Franz. So the Emperor of Man here is going to be taking out Marathi with Gall Miraz as well as these Demogryph Knights. And that's pretty much going to be all she wrote for the Dark Elves. Marathi tried her best, but the overwhelming firepower from the Hammer of the Witches and some of the other units definitely did pretty good. And those Demogryph Knights with Karl it was really cool. He gave the melee defense, and I didn't bring the item that buffs their combat stats. I probably should have, but it was a very unorthodox build for my opponent as well. Bringing like those Reaper Bolt Throwers, like that totally dumped on my strategy initially, and I had to kind of get a little bit lucky with my Cav, but those Reaper Bolt Throwers really just annihilated my Hellblaster. They shut down my Handgunners pretty horribly. Still, the Handgunners generated value against Marathi and some other units like that. Man, that Hammer of the Witches was so beastly. 151 kills, just wrecking those elite infantry, just neutering those Blades of the Blood Queen. And in the late game there, when we reformed ranks and everything, you know, it was pretty solid stuff. And also to answer the question, a lot of you guys always ask, well, why do you advance when you have the artillery advantage? Well, he had artillery himself, but generally speaking, the reason I advance with those guys and fight up on my opponent's front, even when I have better range with the Hammer of the Witches, is because if I waited and my opponent advanced with elite infantry, he then kills my infantry, right? And the distance those infantry that he won with then have to my artillery is very close. Now, if he fights me on his side of the battlefield and he's able to win, for example, he then has to march all the way across the battlefield, taking artillery fire, getting cycle charged by Cav. So it kind of forces your opponent to be stretched out a little bit to answer your question. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this glorious showdown between the Empire led by Karl Franz and the Dark Elves led by Marathi. So have an excellent night, guys, and take care.